Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hi, how's it going?
Ruben Bressler.
Gobble, gobble. How you doing?
Hey, if you guys are listening to this, Ruben is in a giant turkey costume.
Yep, this is my turkey kirigumi that I've decided to wear all day today because I'm going to a function later where everybody is wearing onesie pajama animal costumes.
These are grown adults.
Grown men.
These are grown adults, men and women.
Men and women.
Who are all wearing pajamas later, and I've decided to just wear it all day. So,
is this like a furry thing?
Happy early Thanksgiving. It could be. I don't think it is. Not that I've been told. This is just like comfortable pajamas.
Hashtag Ruben Furries there.
Animal costumes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honourable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 cards of 2018. Ruben?
We had a couple of favorites in the comment sections across the social media channels, and I decided to choose this comment from Pill Grinder over on the Magic Mike's subreddit, where you can go to reddit.com/r/Magic Mikes. You missed Niv Mizzet Perrin. Untapping with Unky Niv is an awesome feeling. It's the 4th of July and Christmas all at once. You shoot off lots of fireworks, then you get lots of presents. Some of these presents are more fireworks. This card has had success in a Grand Prix with Adrian Sullivan at GP Milwaukee playing 4 copies in his Jeskai control deck that won the tournament. It sees play in Control, more mid-range Drake strategies, and the occasional Dragon strategy with Sarkhan. He's also very representative of a good, big creature in current standard. Hard to cast because of his mana cost, powerful with his abilities, but not oppressive, and can be removed. And unless he is removed in very specific ways, the person who cast him is going to get value. Very much representative of why standard is a lot of fun at the moment, and why Niv Mizzet should be in the top 10 list.
He's also seeing play in Vintage. He is one of the Oath targets du jour for Inferno Oath.
So that's kind of great.
I've seen a couple streamers play it, and we've seen some Oath putting up results again, largely because of this card. The double-sided effect, whenever any player plays an instant or sorcery in Vintage is, one of the older formats that is defined by its instants and sorceries. And so being able to ping things, and like you said, kind of fireworks leading to more fireworks, definitely the case in Vintage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there was a deck that I saw that I started running, and basically, literally every time I untapped with Niv Mizzet, I won. Like, it was ridiculous.
If you're resolving a 6-mana creature that doesn't do anything by itself the turn it comes into play, and you untap with it, and it doesn't automatically win the game for you, I don't know, man.
I mean, it's just incredibly good. It's value on top of value. You're drawing cards. Everything you do pings. You're like, do that, ping. Oh wait, I draw and I ping, and then I drew that because then I got ping. And that's how Adrian would just kill people out of nowhere with that friggin' card. It was crazy. Yeah. So I agree. Part of me resisted putting Niv Mizzet on my list because I didn't want to be too now focused. You know what I mean? I think it's easy to get caught up in the Ravnica hype, and we love Ravnica and Ravnica's amazing. But it's like, well, we had 9 months of other things. So I tried to keep that in mind. That said, Pillrounder, give us a comment in the moderators of the subreddit, because that's where we are, so we can get you your gift certificate. Otherwise, thank you very much for a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com, who is providing that. Thanks again. That said, we're going to talk about our top 10 Mythics. Oh my gosh, this is one of those that we kind of define what we want it to be. I think in many ways, at least I had a certain thinking in my top 10 in terms of what's on here and why. For example, I didn't choose anything weird for Magic Online that they made Mythic or whatever. I only chose one card that didn't start as Mythic that was later upgraded. Sure. So that was kind of some criteria for me, is I try not to have too many of those, and I didn't want to do something weird like, they did an Ancestral Recall promo at Mythic one time. It's like, yeah, I get it. That's stupid, but whatever. Mythics as we know the Mythics.
Yeah.
So
for me, I wanted big over-the-top effects. I wanted something that really screamed Mythic. Right. Obviously, I have a penchant for older cards. I tried to pick things I hadn't picked before, because obviously there are several Mythics like Ashen Rider that I've sang the praises of before, and I tried not to do that. So I really tried to find little diamonds in the rough that I could find, and there are several, and I think my number one is pretty great.
Yeah, I think that, so what I tried to do with my list was sort of tell the story of what the Mythic rarity is trying to do and what it's trying to be, and cards that are representative of that. Not necessarily the, I think that these are my top 10 Mythics from a historical perspective. I certainly think that there are probably Mythics that deserve to be on this list that I sort of passed over because either I talked about them before, or we talked about them before, or they didn't have the historical significance as a Mythic that I really wanted to touch on.
All right, so let's get started here with number 10. I was a little shocked just by, and again, including all the Magic promos and stuff, there were like over 1,000 Mythics to choose from, and I was like,
so many.
That's a lot. I didn't realize there were that many Mythics. That's a bunch. That said, Ruben, kick us off with your number 10.
So my number 10 is a card that is a very popular Mythic right now in Standard. In fact, it's one of the very few Mythics that sees a lot of play in Standard. It's got, I think, my favorite animation in Magic the Gathering Arena, because who doesn't love a big armored up dinosaur roaring its way onto the battlefield? My number 10 is Carnage Tyrant.
Nice.
Carnage Tyrant is 4 colorless green for a mythic 7/6 dinosaur from Ixalan. It can't be countered, it has trample, and it has hexproof.
Why?
This is an entry-level mythic for any new player coming to Magic Online. Oftentimes you will see lists of the first mythics that you craft for Arena, and the list consists of things like Rekindling Phoenix and Teferi and Carnage Tyrant. Green-black Explore is a very popular deck in Standard right now, and the top end of which is Carnage Tyrant. A very common play line will be to explore a Carnage Tyrant into the graveyard, and then 10 turns later, memorial it back to your hand and cast it on turn 15.
That's good.
Now that the game has been established and put into place. Really just a great mythic in Standard right now. Other stuff like Vivian Reed could be in this area, Karn, of course, but I think Carnage Tyrant is the mythic du jour right now.
Some of the green-red Titan players in Modern have started using it because, in Modern there are always those blue-white control players who will play Jeskai when it's good, when it's bad, or they'll just play blue-white. And so it's always something you need to keep in the back of your mind. And some of the green ramp decks have started playing Carnage Tyrant as a way to deal with that. I remember when I was playing blue-white Approach in Standard, that card used to give me fits because we had Seal Away and Ixalan's Binding and all of those things target. And so I can't tell you how bad it feels to see a Carnage Tyrant and just look at kind of a still had all these of you're looking at all your answers, the target, and you're like, all right, cool.
Yeah, the best answers right now are Cleansing Nova, Settle the Wreckage, and 2 Goblin Chain Whirlers, which stand in front of it pretty good. So that's it's a great card. No bones about it.
This is the giant idiot. Like when I remember, whether you play your giant idiot and kill them, like, well, this is the guy who shows up and destroys everything. It's got all the right numbers. It's a card that was weird because, like, first of all, it started with very little hype, and then literally pre-orders were like $7 or something, and then it was like, wait a minute, this card is insane, and then poo, and then wait a minute, this card is almost unplayable because the energy's too good, and then and so then it's like, wait a minute, this card is amazing, and so it's done this kind of roller coastery thing of like, you realize this is a gigantic monster that must be answered, has very specific answers, and now those answers are starting to get more answers with Gruul Spellbreaker to stop the Settle the Wreckages, which were wrecking Carnage Tyrant anyway. So yeah, it's going to be really fun to see all that mixed together. And this is a gigantic, scary monster that is a good example of the gigantic, scary monster. Aaron, what's number 10?
My number 10 is an item that has been an important part of the Magic storyline, specifically when it comes to Liliana, but it has tangentially affected other planeswalkers, such as Garruk, who is now known as Garruk the Veil Cursed. It is partly responsible for the way that Ob Nixilis is. And so it was really exciting when things like this that are mentioned in flavor text or mentioned in the storyline get a card. And it's even more exciting when the card is good. I don't believe it saw any standard play or any competitive play, but the EDH players love it. It's going for between $7 and $10 a pop right now. My number 10 is the Chain Veil. So the Chain Veil is 4 colorless. It's a legendary artifact from Magic 2015. It says at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. You can pay 4 colorless and tap it. For each planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities have been activated this turn. So if you're playing a dedicated planeswalker deck, like for example Atraxa decks, Super Friends decks, the groan that comes from the table when this hits, because some nonsense is about to happen, and it's usually game over once the Chain Veil hits. If you have no way to stop it, there's usually some looping happening, happening. If you find a way to untap it, God help you. It's just a really powerful card, really beautiful art by Vulcan Baga, I believe. And it's just a very important part of Magic's storyline. My favorite moment of this, I remember during the Shadows of Her Innistrad storyline where Liliana was the last hope. She was famously fighting the hordes of Emrakul because in a neat little plot twist, the undead weren't weak to Emrakul's influence.
Right.
And so at one
ain't
point,
no brain to corrupt if you ain't got no brain.
which was so brilliant. And Liliana's just sort of the last woman standing. There's blood pouring from all the tattoos. The chain veil's like, everyone's like, are you okay? You got to stop. And she's like, I'm not done. Right. And that was just such a badass moment. And when I think of that and other moments, I think of the chain veil.
I mean, it's a gorgeous piece of art. It's one of these cards that it's a mythic in one set, never been reprinted, super awesome casual card. Just a really nice example of I think $12.50 is kind of the going rate that I'm seeing here. Yeah. And that's just, this is like the ultimate Super Friends card. This is the one that you want when you build your Planeswalker.
It's a great card to be a mythic. It's a story moment. It is a casual all-star that is going to maintain its value, but didn't dominate standard at any point, didn't dominate any constructed format at any point. It's exactly where they want those cards to be.
Yeah, this has all the right numbers and kind of text to put it in it's for your kitchen table, and you're going to love it.
Yep.
Which is awesome.
Or if you're facing it, you're going to hate it.
That too.
That too. Well, look, my number 10 here is the only one on my list that started as rare. And it was because it didn't exist as, the mythic rarity didn't exist when it first showed up. However, this to me is one of the best mythics because it is just one of the kind of quintessential awesome Magic cards. It's a card that is beloved by so many. It is a card that when it was reprinted, it's been printed 4 times. One of them was a Judge foil, but the other 3 times, this card's still worth $36 to $40. Like, it just happens. It's Mark Rosewater's favorite card. And that card is Doubling Season.
This card.
Doubling Season is just a not even remotely fair card. It's a green and 4 generic mana. It was printed as a Mythic and Battle Bond. Originally showed up in Ravnica, City of Guilds. It is a Mythic enchantment for 5 mana that says if an effect under your control would create 1 or more tokens, it makes twice that many. And if effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many on that permanent instead. So Planeswalkers are completely ridiculous. Your token decks are amazing. This is the cornerstone of silly, ridiculous things to do in casual formats, and I love it. And I just want it to be like, this is an amazing, awesome mythic that holds value, is exciting, and just has lasted all this time.
Yeah.
Another grown-worthy card in EDH. Marath players love this. I remember when I first started getting into Commander, I love to tell the story of when I first discovered my Hapatra deck. Hapatra had just came out. I knew that I wanted a Commander deck, and I'm a filthy net decker when it comes to EDH. I know, I'm awful. But I found a deck list on MTG Goldfish, and it was like a $160 deck, which is fine for me. But I remember going over it, and I'm seeing like 40 cents, 30 cents, 20 cents. I'm like, where's all this coming from? Oh, it was $80.
One
that card was half the value of the deck. It was $80 at the time. So you were paying $80 for Doubling Season, and then the rest of the deck was $80. The other 98 cards were $80, and I was like, why?
Yeah. A good entry-level EDH deck to not even put the Doubling Season in there. Just don't play it. Just play something else till you play it.
I mean, right now it's $37, and that's affordable comparatively.
Yeah. 80.
This one, another one that really embodies what a mythic is supposed to be. Great upgrade.
Absolutely. Let's move here to number 9. Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is one of only 2 cards that has ever been banned in Aaron's beloved vintage format that has a creature type. It's very
restricted,
difficult.
I guess, right?
What?
Restricted, right?
Restricted. Yeah, sorry, restricted, not banned. Because you can't get banned in vintage unless you're Falling Star.
Or Chaos
Or Chaos. Very difficult to get restricted in vintage. But a powerhouse like Monastery Mentor certainly can do the trick. Monastery Mentor is 2 colorless and a white for a human monk, 2/2, originally from Fate Reforged. It has prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create a 1/1 monk creature token with prowess. Speak little, do much. Partially because the tokens that we had for our Dominaria Kickstarter of mine were 1/1 prowess monk tokens, but also because Monastery Mentor has had such a massive effect on all of the formats going all the way back to vintage. It is still, to this moment, the second most expensive card from Fate Reforged after another iconic mythic named Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Monastery Mentor is just a spectacular card, been a win condition and a thorn in the side of every opponent it faces for several years.
It's had a really strange trajectory. I remember I was playing Esper Dragons at the time. This was back when all the standard decks had drag names like Jeskai Black, Mardu Blue. It was Battle for Zendikar. We had the weird Tango lands and all. You were playing those 4-color monstrosity decks, and so it really kind of saw like sideboard play. Like I was using it in Esper Dragons just a way to kind of close out my game 3s or in the mirror. It saw like almost no modern play. Like Modern didn't care. Legacy, the only deck that really used it was Miracles, and even then it was mostly again a sideboard card. It rarely saw main deck play, and then in Vintage it just blew up and just kind of went straight to the top and was restricted, and even now is sort of one of the few win conditions a lot of these decks will run, because you can do, when you're playing Moxen act trigger prowess, and so when you can bounce them all back, like if you do outcome whoop whoop whoop, or you do top things, you do the top, put the top on top there, you can just loop that, just do that over and over again.
Top does whatever it wants, right? That's all.
We all like it when the top does things.
We sure do. And so yeah, it wasn't until you paired it with older cards that it just really started to do.
Yeah.
A turn 1 mentor is terrifying.
Well, it ain't Sensei's Dividing Bottom now, is it? What? Monastery Mentor, this is cool, and I actually, I've started pulling up price charts as we've been talking about cards, and this is a card that was like, it's $25, and it was $15, and then wait a minute, Vintage found it, it's $25, and then they restricted it, and it's $10. That's what it is. Yeah, but the card itself is fantastic. This is one of those cards that you're like, you're playing Vintage, the most powerful format of all time, and you cannot play this 3-mana 2/2. You only have one copy, and you're like, well, what? So this is one of those, you need all that context to realize that, the numbers aren't huge and the mana cost isn't low. It's that the synergy is just unbelievable with this thing. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. So, Aaron, what's number 9?
My number 9 is a card that I love in Commander, and I'm not finance girl, but sometimes I happen to get in there when the going's good. This was a card that was pretty affordable. I started building a Locust God EDH deck, and this was a deck list I'd found on Tapped Out, and they were like, you're going to need one of this card. And I was like, all right, I don't really see it, but all right, here's $6. It's fine. It is now worth $18, and now that I've had the pleasure of actually using it, it's the best $6 I've ever spent. We mentioned with Niv Mizzet, fireworks leading to more fireworks. This card is a prime example of that. My number 9 is Paradox Engine. So Paradox Engine is 5 colorless. It's a legendary artifact from Kaladesh. It says whenever you cast a spell, whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control. So speaking of Moxen, so when you're playing, your mana rocks in EDH, you just tap all of them, cast your spell, and then whoop, all your artifacts untap. And then if you have, for playing the Locust God, you do like time reversal, untap, do the thing. It just feels like a hug from Jesus. And this was a card that really didn't see a lot of competitive play unless you're Saffron Olive. The Vintage players tried it a little bit. It didn't really take off, but in EDH, it feels amazing. And so if you're playing, the right amount of artifacts, please, this card is worth every dollar, and you will feel just so good.
There was Gilded Lotus and Paradox Engine in the format for a hot minute, and they tried to make a combo deck with that, and it was super adorable.
Basalt Monolith. Oh.
I mean, it was just great. And this is a really weird card. This is a card that I'm like, that whole sentence just scares me. Everything about it.
Terrifying sentence.
Mm-hmm. Just untap all the stuff, which means you can use all the stuff, and yeah, it's non-land, but you know how that doesn't really matter all the time.
It's a big piece of a lot of EDH combos. It does nothing fair. There's no part of this that is fair.
Good.
Yeah, and it's amazing because if you look at the price chart, you literally bought it at the exact right time.
Yeah, I didn't even know. I was like, all right, well, okay, we'll see what happens. I'll just sell it.
Smart.
Or not. And
There you
smart.
Go. There you go. All right.
I need the butterfly meme. Is this finance?
All right. So for my number 9, essentially what I did to make most of my list was, you scroll through the Mythics, and I'm looking, and I'm thinking, and I think, for me, they have to sort of jump out. It's like, yo, this was important. And I was like, whoa, this was important. It was important in a lot of different ways. One, when we went back to Innistrad, big deal, right? Big deal. Want to make sure it's cool, make sure it's awesome, want to make sure you have really cool, awesome Mythics, but not just cool, awesome Mythics, but the way they unveil the things, the way that you had Christine Sprankle turn herself from Archangel Addison into Addison the Purifier, which was amazing.
Yep.
And Archangel Addison is my number 9, and essentially is an incredible card. This slices and dices. Have a seat. Give me a second. It's 2 white and 3 generic mana for a 4/4 flash flying vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn, and we're not done. When a non-angel creature non-angel creature you control dies, transform Archangel Addison at the beginning of the next upkeep. And when she does, she is a 6/5 flyer, and when this creature transforms into Addison the Purifier, it deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. And it turns out all of those words are good.
Yeah.
And very powerful.
Just in such an important moment. I was there. I was at GP Detroit during Eldrazi Winter when they had the cathedrals, when they had the sets where you could visit the cathedral. And I remember when she came out, there's a picture of the overhead, and everybody's looking at her. It's literally her, the cathedral, and the crowd. And it goes back far enough where there's nobody not looking at her. Like, this was such a dynamic moment in terms of content and ways to preview cards. And the card needed to be good. You know, if you're going to go through all this trouble and you flip it over and the card's bad, your moment fails. But to have that, the lead up be so good. And then when she flips over the card and you hear the gasp, it's like, you know, and it was a good card. And there was certainly the Addison test and standard where if your deck couldn't deal with this or you didn't have a plan for it, don't even bother showing up. And very, very good cards. Sometimes even sees play in Modern. I know some of the Coco decks I think were playing with her or trying her. Certainly they used Standard. But yeah, it was just a format defining card when it was around, needed to be good, and everything leading up to it was just perfection.
Right.
Perhaps no character that isn't itself a planeswalker is more indelible in recent memory than Addison, other than maybe Niv Mizzet. That's like the scale that we're on in terms of character moments of non-planeswalkers. So this card did need to have resonance. It needed to be good. 8 mana Addison is popular amongst casual fans, but did nothing competitive in competitive sphere. This one did, and was also a fan amongst the Vorthoses. So this was just a home run all the way around.
I mean, to give you an idea, on April 12th, 2016, this was worth $60. This was a $60 Mythic in Standard, absolutely. She ran that place for a while.
It also was a great way to lead off, going back to Innistrad, to prove that there were no sacred cows, to say that we'll even kill this character off. Like, nobody's safe. Olivia, Sorin, nobody's safe. And that was a great way to, because, you know, you don't want to feel like there's no tension if you know that everybody's going to come out of it alive. But to lead off with that, that was amazing. Yeah,
it was cool. It was supposed to be. This is what when it works. When you want them to make a card that's great and it's not like crazy oppressive, but it is like she driving this format. Versus back in the day, they'd have these characters that finally get cards and they'd suck. You'd be like, Gerard Capuchin sucks.
Gerard Capuchin's garbage. Commander Greven Ilvek is garbage.
Why did they suck?
Garbage. Yeah.
I mean, all of these huge characters that should be absolutely incredible, super cool cards just aren't, and we don't have to deal with that anymore.
They figured out the recipe, you know, just like, I mean, Teferi is very, very good, probably not ban-worthy. Addison is very, very good, probably not ban-worthy. Jace Vryn's Prodigy, very, very good. Again, not ban-worthy. So they finally figured out the recipe of how to get these story characters right. And this one feels like a Mythic, is powerful, maintains its value, all the things you want in a good Mythic.
Yeah, and nowadays you can get it for like $5.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. All right, move on here to number 8. I don't have one. It's higher on someone else's list. I'm guessing it's Ruben's. But Ruben, what is your number 8?
Why would you call me out like that?
Because that's what I do here.
Why would you say something so controversial and yet so brave?
Don't be a jive turkey, Evan.
Yeah, that's right. You want a little leg or a little breast? So
wow.
Little breast-ler.
Wow! Oh my God!
Yeah, there we go. We did it. Wow. We've come full giblet. So my number 8 is representative of a creature type that came about. That when it first came about was a little controversial, and we didn't ever think that we'd see gods printed on Magic cards, and in Theros they did, and a number of them became very popular. But the one that I've decided to go with here is the one that saw the most Pro Tour competitive success. And so I've gone with Thassa, God of the Sea. Thassa, God of the Sea is 2 colorless and a white for a legendary enchantment creature god. Thassa is indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa isn't a creature, which means that you need to have 5 blue pips, or each blue mana in the mana costs of permanents you control count toward the devotion to blue. It is a 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1 and pay a colorless and a blue. Target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Now, since this was legal, Mono Blue Devotion has been a very popular archetype when Theros was in Standard. In fact, the Pro Tour Dublin Finals was a mirror match between Mono Blue Devotion.
Wow.
Since it was originally in Standard, the more expensive god actually is now Perforos.
Oh, yeah.
Perforos, God of the Forge, is more expensive than Theros printed Thought Seasons, which I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Pretty spectacular run there, as well as the fact that Perforos was somewhat popular, not nearly as popular as Erebos or Thassa in Standard, but had a good run nonetheless. And since then, we've, of course, seen other gods, such as the Scarab God, which I almost put on the list in this slot, or Oketra or Hazaret, whom we've talked about several times on the show before. But Thassa, God of the Sea, really emblematic of, yes, gods are epic. And if we're going to print gods, we can make them good, like Thassa.
Well, I think what also made them good, they had to be, for me, the God test was, does it have to be active to matter? And a lot of times with Thassa and Erebos and even Perforos, like that first batch, it's not even about the devotion. Like these cards just as enchantments are fine. Like just having the scry, having the unblockability, having to turn off life gain, or even just the Perforos ability. If they're creatures, that's just gravy. And I feel like that's what set the first batch apart was that ability, where even if you don't have the 5 devotion, you're still doing things, the God is still putting in work, and that's is a really good example of that.
Now it happened at Pro Tour. I guess it was Pro Tour Eldritch Moon, because that's when the Emrakul showed up. But before then, no one had been surprised at a Pro Tour like they had with the Mono Blue Devotion deck. I'm telling you, no one thought this card was good. Like nobody was talking about it. No one writing articles about it. No one was saying, "Look, check out this cool build."
Yeah. It was very weird. I was in the house, or I was in the castle for the Team Star City Games testing. And they pull out their, Cloudfin Raptors and their Frostburn Weirds, and I'm just looking at them like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference between the black and the blue was the blue cards in a vacuum were quite bad, where it's like Cloudfin Raptor, Frostburn Weird, like what? Like these are the black deck had Thought Season, Pack Rat, cards that obviously screamed good value, Night Veil Spectre, But when you look at the blue side, it was largely like uncommons, where it was like, okay.
Yeah, but like
there's a lot of main deck Tidebinder mages where you just hope for the best.
It's true. I mean, but you would see, I think for me, like this was one of the sort of enlightening Pro Tours as the Pro Tour went on, and you could see how important that free scry was. And like, she turned into a 5/5, and that's great, but also it was super important to have that activated ability. All of those things kept all of the synergies kept building up to make her great. Really fun price chart for her, because starts out super high, $25 or so, and then kind of goes down to 5, and now she's back up to like 15. Sure. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really important card of those 5 original gods, because she was the only god that was less expensive than her weapon.
Yeah.
All of the other gods, I think, cost 4, and their weapons either cost 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
The whip, the hammer, etc.
Right.
Whereas Bident of Thassa costs 4, so Thassa can come down early and maybe play the Bident to turn her into a 5/5.
Nice. Aaron, what's number 8?
Speaking of Theros, I'm known as sort of the Dredge Girl. I'm known as the Graveyard Girl, known as the Reanimator Girl, but I also have a great appreciation for Enchantress decks. I love casting lots of enchantments, and if there's an engine there, Constellation was one of my favorite mechanics of all time. I still giggle like an idiot when I play Doomwig Giant. I will once in a while bring out a Legacy Enchantress list just to feel alive, and so I love enchantment decks. And so when enchantments were a thing in Standard, I was there. I won my first ever game day with a green-white enchantments list with the help of this card. This is a card that I've talked about before. One of the things about Enchantress decks is that you can certainly, you have a really great way of, you're just casting enchantments, but you still have to find a way to close out the game. Unfortunately, there aren't many enchantments that just win you the game. And this was a card that allowed you to do what you were doing anyway, and allowed you to turn the corner and go in a really neat direction that people maybe weren't expecting. Really beautiful art. It's sitting at $6 now, which is more than I thought it would be going for. My number 8 is Starfield of Nyx. So Starfield of Nyx is 4 colorless and a white. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return an enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. As long as you control 5 or more enchantments, each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature in addition to its other types, and has base power and base toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost. So all of those silk wraps, those oblivion rings, any of those enchantments you have are now creatures, which allows you to, turn the corner and win the game. A lot of people would board out their removal against you because we were running 4 Herald of the Centaurs or Herald of Pantheon, and then it's just a bunch of enchantments. We would win with Sigil of the Throne. Well, now your Sigil of the Throne is a 5/5 creature, and so you can just sort of, all these enchantments are are now bodies, and that's so awesome. The fact that it sort of has an enchantment devotion theme, 5 or more enchantments, bringing enchantments back from the graveyard. Just such a powerful card, so much fun, and just really emblematic of a great time in Standard for me.
That art is just amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Spectacular.
Like, the artwork from Theros was incredible.
I love Theros so much. Starfield of Nyx is another great card to put at Mythic. It's a card that was, a tier 1.5, tier 2 kind of strategy. It wasn't the best thing that you could be doing at Standard by any means, but good enough that it was playable. A casual all-star, a unique card in the history of Magic. Nothing like it exists. I mean, you have things like Replenish, but that's not a permanent. It doesn't do it all the time. And it's a unique part of the story as well. It is really emblematic of, there's no mistaking not just what block this is from, but what set this is from. And it's just a great entry.
That's fantastic. All right, so let's move on here to number 7. I have one of those, and yeah,
Lucky.
I know, right? And this is not necessarily when they started. This is when they started making Mythics. Period. Right. This is Shards of Alara. They've never made Mythics before. What are they going to do? And everyone was super freaking out over Stark and Vault because, oh my god, he's the hot stuff. But no, we had our first ever chase Mythic in Elspeth, Knight Errant. Elspeth showed up and no one really liked her or talked about her at first or whatever, and then the Bant deck kind of came together and everyone kind of lost their minds over the power level of this crazy card, because 2 pluses is just a lot of pluses. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Elspeth Knight Errant is 2 white, 2 generic mana for a Planeswalker Elspeth, Mythic from Shards of Alara, +1. Put a 1/1 white soldier creature token into play. +1. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying until end of turn, or -8 for the rest of the game. Artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands you control are indestructible. And she starts with 4 loyalty, which is a lot. Considering you play her on 4, +1 makes a dude. She now not only has somebody to protect her, she has 5 loyalty to get rid of. So that's going to be a thing.
It was a super big deal. You almost never untapped with Planeswalkers that you ticked up. Most of the Planeswalkers ticked down to protect themselves, things like a Johnny Vengeant, Garruk Wildspeaker. This one being able to tick up to that high of a loyalty while also putting a bodyguard out in front was a huge deal.
Yeah, we had seen the base Planeswalkers, right? We had seen the lore 1 walkers. We're now getting more walkers. Everyone was trying to figure out, oh man, a Johnny Vengeant. They gave you a Johnny Vengeant for free at the pre-release. It has to be the best one, right? It's like, and the fact that the other +1 gave it flying, I think was just that was where it crossed over the threshold of like, oh my god, seriously, with Rafika the Many and working so well with the mechanics and stuff. And Exalted,
just a noble hierarch, right? If you have a noble hierarch and a soldier token in play, and you go to the +1, that you're attacking for 5 with your soldier token. So that's a quick clock.
Yeah, it was scary. She was super powerful. I loved her. She was great, and she's still worth dollars because people enjoy playing with Elspeth, and that's great. So, Aaron, what's your number 7?
We have been so freaking lucky to have been given as many preview cards as we've had through the years. We're going on 4 years doing this show, believe it or not. And when you look back at all of them, you think of Angel of Invention, you think of the bird thing with all that gives you the combat abilities. You know what I mean? We've been given so many.
Majestic Mirrior.
There
we go. We've been so freaking lucky through the years. And not all the cards have taken off. But when you're fortunate enough to preview a card that does well, when you're able to turn on the Pro Tour and see Reed Duke doing a deck tech with your card, your cast preview card, that's a very special feeling. My number 7 is Seasons Past. So Seasons Past is 4 colorless and 2 green. It's a sorcery. It says return any number of cards with different converted mana costs from your graveyard to your hand. Put Seasons Past on the bottom of its owner's libraries. This was a preview card that we had been given. It was cute. Like we were certainly happy to receive it. And we were like, all right, not really sure it was going to do anything. And then cut to the Pro Tour. Green Black was a thing, and it led to some interesting deck building requirements of you wanted to make sure that you had things of different kinds that you could get your 2, get your 3, get your 4. I played this deck for a little while. It was really, really great, and it's just a very special feeling when you get a card that is not only good but is able to go all the way to the top. And I'm very proud that we've been given this card. I see it in Commander all the time, and I'm like, that's my baby.
We got to show it off to the world.
We did. It's a very neat take. Green is sort of known as kind of the regrowth color. This is what green does in various ways. And this was something very unique in terms of being restricted by mana cost and things of that nature. And what do you want to get back? And how do you want to loot that? It was a very fun deck to play.
Turns out this card with Nissa's Renewal was just Sphinx's Revelation in Standard. Who would have thought it?
Yeah.
It was pretty fantastic to turn on the TV and see, you know, John Finkel and Reed Duke and all those big names playing our goofy little 6-mana preview card. We have ourselves a pretty good Magic Mike's pre-constructed deck in green with Death Gorge Scavenger. We got our Masters M25 Watch Wolf to
Goratama,
play on 2, right? And then our Mirrior on turn 5 to top off the curve. We got a pretty good deck.
And in seasons past, get it all back.
Come on, cool stuff. Where's that pre-constructed product?
There you go. I mean, I think what you're trying to say, much like the movie Moana, is you're welcome. And, you know, so because we were like, here's a season pass. It's fun. It's weird. It's neat. And it turns out to be good enough to fit like right in that metagame slot. It wasn't great for a very long time, but just for that moment, it was really, really terrific. And it's also dirt cheap. So if you want a copy, go get you one.
Absolutely.
All right. Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7, much like you, Evan, is a Planeswalker. Lots of Planeswalkers are excellent choices to be Mythics because for most of their lifespan, they've been Mythics, other than the original Lorwyn 5, which were rares. The Mythic rarity came about soon thereafter in Alara block. And so I wanted to pick Planeswalkers that were emblematic of what we knew about them as characters or did something story-related that translated onto the card. I'm a big fan of cards that have rules text as flavor text, right? And Karn Liberated doesn't need flavor text because it does what he does in the story. Karn Liberated costs 7 colorless mana, enters with 6 loyalty. That's a big boy, big silver boy right there. +4 on a Planeswalker, by the way, gets you to exile a card from target player's hand. -3 exiles target permanent, and -14, much like in the new Phyrexia storyline, restart the game, then leaving in exile all non-aura permanent cards exiled with Karn Liberated, then put those cards onto the battlefield under your control. Obviously was very popular in constructed formats, most notably now in Modern. This past weekend at Grand Prix Oakland, I too played Tron. I played Mono Green Tron, and the goal is to play a tower, a power plant, and a mine.
You were playing white border Tron. You were full monster.
I was playing really garbage Tron because the whole point of playing Tron is to tilt your opponent. So I was using the playmat that they gave us at the event, which always is a tilting experience, much less when it's brought to you by Adult Swim. I had all mismatched 8th and 9th edition white bordered Urza lands.
Filthy.
And 1 5th edition Urza land just cuz.
Oh my God.
I had Masters 25 Ancient Stirrings. Oh yeah, I had the whole works. I had the worst. So, but Karn, in and of himself, indelible character, created at the Tolarian Academy, brought about by Baron the Master Wizard, in that the Silver Golem, he could pass through time and planes, and being made of pure silver, would not come out the other side damaged by any means. And so when he got his Planeswalker Spark, I believe from Venser, if I remember.
Yes, Venser died as a result.
Venser died, and the Spark was sort of transferred to Karn. Just a huge character, both in size and in legacy in Magic.
I would love to be a fly on the wall at Wizards HQ. Like, did they think about the Tron lands? Like, did anyone consider that in other formats you could do this on turn 3, or was that just a big whoopsie?
I feel like 7, first of all, being an Urza-related character, Karn, being created by Baron and Urza at the Tolarian Academy, and costing exactly 7, not 6, not 8, right? Like, I think that it was on purpose.
That makes a little sense. Now, look, this was the first ever colorless Planeswalker. They had never made one before. It was weird and a lot of, it's scary whenever they do something new because sometimes Wizard screws it up and oh my God, and everything's on fire. So, and it's fun to go back and notice that this was, it started out like, like $12, just whatever, and it got all the way up to $100 a copy before they finally reprinted an Ultimate Masters because this card is just amazing. And yes, sometimes you have to live the dream, and turn 3 Karn Liberated is, it's good, clean living. It's ridiculous. And it's just overpowering. And it sucks because we watched you because you were in the feature match for round 1, GP Oakland. There you were. Yeah, and my favorite, is when is Ruben's Beast Mode, which me and him got a little bit of it during the pre-release, and everyone got freaked out because we went all Beast Mode. But it's fine. But the commentators were just like, if his opponent plays Karn Liberated before he does, that's a tide you can't turn. And that's incredible, and it
That's
sucks.
what happened.
That's literally exactly what happened.
I had a weird tournament. I played the mono green Tron Mirror in rounds 1, 2, and 3. The player on the draw was undefeated in games.
Ew.
Wow.
I lost 0-2 after winning the die roll in the feature match area, and then rattled off 4 in a row after losing both other die rolls. That can't be normal. Seems like a
Well,
good
you are dressed as a turkey.
die roll win.
So
What?
you are dressed as a turkey. So
Hey, fair. You know,
Wow. All right. Well,
harsh
we'll
but fair.
move on here to number 6. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is the only hire that is on someone else's list.
Nice. Aaron, what's your number 6?
Well, speaking of wizards trying new things and setting things on fire, and oh my god, how the mighty have fallen. You know, this was a card that was getting so much press, you know, just a year or two ago, and now goes for a measly $1.25 online. This was a card that was good enough to be banned and standard. You know how rarely we used to use those words of banned and standard? This was, for me, a treat. I enjoyed watching this deck on coverage, but a lot of people hated it. There was verbiage of watching spinning the wheel, trying to see what you get, and a lot of times you were getting an Ulamog, or you were getting even an Emrakul, and you were having a really, really good time. My number 6 is Etherworks Marvel. So Etherworks Marvel is 4 colorless, it's a legendary artifact. It is from Kaladesh.
Kaladesh, yeah.
It says, whenever a permanent you control is put into a graveyard, you get an energy counter. You can tap it and pay 6 energy to look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever a permanent you control, if you crack an Evolving Wilds, that's an energy counter. If you block, chump blocking, you're getting value out of every single thing you do. It feeds the marvel. And then when you have enough to tap it, it's surprisingly easy to not only fuel it up the first time, but if you happen to whiff, give me a turn or two, we're going to do it again. And so the inevitability was there. It was super powerful. This came out shortly after an Eldrazi set, so you had really scary things that you were able to spin into. And even if you weren't, you know, there were even just some other things that you would take. You know, it's not an Eldrazi, but we'll take it, which is a terrifying card. I loved what it did for coverage, but a lot of people hated it. Really, I think Standard was at its lowest point when it was around, and inevitably it was banned. But I'm glad that they at least tried it. You know, we do give Wizards a lot of flack for things, but we would rather have Wizards go for the fences than not.
I mean,
It was a calculated risk, but they were bad at math.
Wow. I mean, this was the first thing you saw from Kaladesh. This was the, oh my god, jaw-dropping moment of what is this? Oh my god, we have a new resource, and my lord, was it broken. But I love, this was like right there as my number 10. In terms of like my top 10, this is a mythic ability. For like the instant I read and it said you may cast that card, I was like, oh my god. Because if you remember, they were going to rotate Standard faster, and you weren't going to have the Eldrazi from Battle for Zendikar in the same format as Kaladesh, and now you did, and oh my god, that broke everything. It was absurd. Not to mention we had to get to the point where Attune to Ether, for God's sake, turned out to be one of the best cards in Standard, and they banned it.
I mean, you know, when Wood Weaver's Puzzle Knot is a 4 of in the best deck in Standard, I think you understand that there's a problem happening.
Yeah, it was a little busted. I congratulate them for trying something different. I want them to try things. Let's not do energy again, maybe, but we can do something else. If you wanted to make a different resource later, you've certainly seen what went wrong here, so maybe you can fix it and do it better next time. So, all right. So my number 6 is a card that was not banned, but certainly was discussed by it. This is my favorite card to bring up when someone says, like, you know, what's a great control deck, or what happens when you're playing a great control deck? And here's my definition. My favorite control decks, the ones that I feel are the most powerful, are the ones where you've lost the game, but you don't know that you've lost the game. And there ain't no card better than explaining that than Sphinx's Revelation. Sphinx's Revelation is a card that I had a conversation with about an R&D member, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And, you know, they said, would you rather have a blue-white that does Sphinx's Revelation, or would you rather have a blue-white that's sort of more tempo-oriented, sort of a Delver-esque strategy? And I'm like, well, people get pissed off at Delver. They really, really did. But you can also understand where you're in the game, right? You know, you're making it happen. You still have the ability to come back or whatever. Sphinx's Revelation, when they Sphinxes for 3, untap Sphinx for 5 or whatever, that game's over. You may not know it, but that game is just done. And there's nothing you're going to do to stop that sequence from running you over. Sphinx's Revelation is blue, white X. It's a mythic from Return to Ravnica and Modern Masters 2017. It's an instant that lets you gain X life and draw X cards. And that is extremely good. And probably too good, but
extremely good.
But we live with it. And yeah, it was a powerhouse. I can't say any other way.
And still influences the decisions that they make. You know, you look at the blue card draw that we've been given since then, and you can tell that they are terrified of coming anywhere close to it. You know, we get the radical idea, we get the chemist's insight, we get glimmer of genius. You know, the card draw that we're getting is not stellar. We now have a 4-mana Wrath again, you know, in standard with the Kaya Wrath, and people are losing their minds because the last 4-mana Wrath we had was Supreme Verdict, which was also seen as a card that, you know, put Wizards on guard because it was very, very good. And so we're still kind of paying for Sphinx's Revelation Sins, and that the card draw that we're getting is very situational.
Yeah. The closest approximation to Sphinx's Revelation that we've gotten, speaking of X spells and X puns, we have Expansion and Explosion, which deals X damage to a target and then draws X cards at instant speed, but also costs another colored mana and does not gain life. So, you know, even the closest approximation that we've had since then, 7 years ago, doesn't really hold a candle to Sphinx's Revelation. Not to mention the fact that the Sphinx that it's named for, Azor, doesn't even hold a candle to Sphinx's Revelation and has the ability stapled onto its 6/6 for 6 body.
Yeah, that's the activated ability for this monster creature, and it's like, sorry, that's unplayable because this dog over here is saying no, which is fine. Old Ravi Chupacabras.
Yep.
So no, thank you.
Dog.
Let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's your number 5?
There are very few words in Magic the Gathering that when you say them, you know that something exciting is coming. There are a lot of specters, and you know what to expect from a specter, but they aren't all exciting. There are a lot of elves, right? There's a lot of Llanowar. If you see Morrow Sorcerer, maybe you get excited, but they aren't all spectacular. Lotus is one of those words. Mox is one of those words. And no Mox has excited folks from the casual to the competitive quite like Mox Opal. Mox Opal is a card that was originally printed in Scars of Mirrodin and thankfully was reprinted in one of the Modern Masters expansions, or else we would have higher prices even than our current $90 price point. Mox Opal costs you 0 mana and $90 for a legendary artifact, and it is quite legendary. And it has the following ability: Metalcraft. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. Activate this ability only if you control 3 or more artifacts. Very easy to get this going in Modern. Decks like Lantern of Insight, Affinity, the new Turbo Whir decks. They try to just play a bunch of 0-cost cards and play a Whir of Invention for 3 on turn 1 or something along those lines. You utilize Mox Opal. This card has always been and probably always will be in the discussion of potential Modern bans until it is banned. Just a very powerful card, lives up to the Mox moniker.
Vintage as well, you know, just watching someone go, you know, Pearl, Sapphire, Opal, very easy to turn it on even on turn 1. And then you play the game of, you know, you think legendary artifact, you're not necessarily, why would you want to, you hear legendary, you think, why would I run more than 1? Oh no, you can run 4. Because what you do is you can tap it, float that mana, and then whoop, and do insane things with it. And it's the same thing in Vintage. You know, obviously it's not restrict worthy in Vintage, but definitely something where when you see that, you know that some nonsense is coming down the pipe.
I was at Pro Tour Amsterdam when they unveiled the first spoilers for the set or whatever, and Mox Opal had came out at some point, you know, at which point I get to go, I get to have the wonderful privilege of going directly to Wizards R&D and go, what were you thinking? what And you know, this is one of those cards that it's dangerous, but it's exciting, and it lives up to the Mox status, and the fact that we get Mox Amber and it didn't break anything, but it's still neat. That's great. I think that's what they ultimately wanted, was something that was like cool and neat, but not overpowering. And even if you don't get the colored artifact lands, it doesn't matter. You just need an artifact land like Darksteel Citadel or whatever to get you there. Darksteel Citadel, this Ornithopter, congratulations, you have a free mana now. That's probably too good. We're probably just going towards this end game of banning, but it is a $100 card almost at this point. One of those cards that they can reprint into any sort of Masters or, you know, supplemental set to guarantee it's going to sell. That's what these kind of cards do.
My favorite thing to do, my favorite way to stick it to an Opal player is destroy everything like but the Opal. Just get it to a point where you can't even get the Metalcraft anymore, where it's like, I'm gonna kill that. It's not really bothering me. I just don't want you to have it. You do the Ashen Rider thing where it's like Ashen Rider the first one, Cabal Therapy, get rid of the second one, and I'll leave you the Opal.
Aaron, what's your number 5?
So speaking of eternal formats and artifacts, I've been practicing for the Vintage Super League, which starts this coming week, next week. Next week. Right. I know how calendars work. So be sure to tune in. It's going to be a really good show. But I've been practicing for the VSL because I have to play decks other than Dredge. I know. And one of the decks I started testing is the Namesake. The Namesake of it is my number 5. You know, one of the nice things about playing Vintage is I'm sort of the baby of the VSL. I've only been playing Vintage for like 2 years. And there are cards that have these long, esteemed histories that I wasn't around for, that at first glance I didn't necessarily get. Do you know how long it took me to realize Necropotence was good? I didn't get it. I didn't know. Now I do. This is another card that I didn't get it at first. I was like, well, it's cute. It's a little annoying. I don't really get it. And then I sleeved it up the other night and oh no, I get it. And I'm a fan. I played a little bit with the rarity here. This was a card that originally was rare, did become mythic rare when it was printed in From the Vault Annihilation. Good enough for me. My number 5 is Smokestack. So Smokestack is 4 colorless. It's an artifact. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a soot counter on Smokestack. That is soot. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a permanent for each soot counter on Smokestack. The way that you get the most value out of this is you stack them triggers. So you do the sacrifice first, 0, and then you put the soot counter on it, and then you pass. And you run things like Crucible of Worlds, where you're happy just sacrificing your lands. They don't really have any way to do that. You sacrifice the Mox and you don't need anymore, and you get a really nice lock going. This is the namesake of the Stacks decks that you often see in Vintage. Lantern Control is very much I would say the baby Pokemon, that eventually evolves into this. Lantern just sort of kills you by milling you, but you still have all your permanents. You still feel like you're in the game somehow. And then you mentioned Sphinx and not really knowing that you're dead yet. You see a Smokestack and give it time, you will have no board. Lantern makes you feel like you still got a shot because you have all of your permanents. Smokestack takes everything, and it feels so good. We didn't win very many games, but I definitely was a convert after the other night, and I get it now.
I love this card in Cube. It's a terrific card to play around with.
You're that guy.
Yeah!
Who puts this in your cube. Unbelievable. What?
We did it, everybody!
Fun?
We did it!
Fun.
It was great. It was so much fun. You get to build the stacks deck with that prison deck, slow them down, grind them out, slowly crush away their hopes and dreams.
Unbelievable.
That's MTG, y'all. That's
I mean, this card's really good and definitely deserving of a spot on the list because it is a card originally printed in Urza's Saga that didn't get a chance to be mythic until it was reprinted, but definitely does have that mythic feel to it. And I just want to say that I think that deck and the entire deck.
Yes.
With all of the stacking of soot counters is truly spectacular.
Wow. All right. Well, my number 5 is a card that was part of a cycle, and when it showed up was not necessarily the obvious choice for most powerful. It didn't take long for this card to shoot up the charts and start crushing events left and right and center. It was also very controversial that they decided to reprint this entire cycle of cards in M2012. Because in M11, now M10 had huge impact, but M11 was defined by the Titans. And the Titans were incredible, and they were just like the most you've ever gotten out of 6 mana from a magic creature card. And Primeval Titan was the king of the Titans. From Valakut to Wolf Run Ramp or whatever, like to being in Modern for all this time. Like even the point now, I'm always astounded by how powerful it is just to go get some lands. Just go get some lands, and it's just freaking awesome. Primeval Titan did show up in M11. It is a 2-green 4 generic mana 6/6 giant with trample. And whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. That's all it does. It just double rampant growths. Is that a problem? Is that a thing?
Well, when those lands have, when you're playing Slayer's Stronghold and you can give something, haste and vigilance, or you can give it Sunhome and give it like double strike. Yeah, it's a problem. Colony Garden, if you want insurance so that your Liliana won't make you sack it. It's a thing.
Oh, it's incredible. And
gotta love that Sakura Tribe Scout is a staple part of the modern metagame. Yeah, all of the Titans are spectacular. Primeval Titan, obviously the headliner now in its current existence in Modern as a competitive card, and of course during its lifetime in Standard. Both Teamer and Red-Green Titan were very powerful archetypes. When it came out, perhaps people thought that Grave Titan or Inferno Titan were going to be the headliners, but all 5 saw competitive play, and all 5, I believe, to this day are still in the cube. And to be a cycle of cards where all 5 of the cycle are in the cube, that is a heck of an achievement. I think the only other cards that really achieve that are things like the fetch lands and the dual lands and the swords, the five multicolored swords, and I think that's about it.
Yeah, you have this cycle of cards, because again, when M11 was about to, sort of leave and M12 was going to be spoiled, and everyone was like, all right, okay, we did it, guys. We've been through the Titan Wars. Everybody's Titan. We finally figured out that Frost Titan was the hidden Titan that no one knew was good, but was actually very good.
Breaker. It's the mirror match breaker.
Yeah, it's the Titan breaker. So we're like, okay, cool. We're done. And then they're like, we're reprinting them in M12. And you're like, oh, God, no. And as I recall, I think they also reprinted Mana Leak as well in M12, and that was a problem. And it was just like, man, you didn't have to reprint the Titans. We could have put them in the rear view and been happy about how powerful they were,
right?
But they didn't, and it's fine. But whatever. Move on here to number 4. I don't have a number 4 or a number 3.
Ooh, wow.
As they are higher on y'all's lists.
Wow.
But Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is the first real paradigm shift in what a mythic means, what it means to be a mythic. There are several milestone moments along the evolution of mythics coming out. When mythics first came out, people were like, or Wizards was like, these are story moments, these are massive characters, these are big effects. A mythic means something different than just being a rare. One of the paradigm shifts was this card, where this looks like it is a rare. And in fact, it was downshifted to rare for Iconic Masters. But when it was released, and it was mythic, people were a little surprised. This was History of Benalia before History of Benalia. Where you look at history and you go, that's a mythic? That's a weird thing to put at mythic. And Lotus Cobra was that for people. Lotus Cobra is a colorless and a green for a 2/1 creature type snake, originally from Zendikar, where it was a mythic. Later, a Grand Prix promo, and then, of course, reprinted as a rare in Modern or in Iconic Masters. It had this ability, Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may add 1 mana of any color. Iconic art, both from the promo version and from the original version by Chippy. An extremely powerful card, extremely good card that saw a lot of play in all formats, including Vintage, where people wanted to play a Lotus Cobra on 1 and then play like a Jace on 2 or some other 5-mana spell on turn 2 or something like that. Had a huge lifespan in Standard, even had some amount of success in Old Extended and a little bit in Modern as well. A staple of all sorts of cubes and all sorts of decks. But to me, in the evolution of what it means to be a mythic, Lotus Cobra kind of stands alone.
There was such an unbelievable hype around Zendikar. It's hard to describe for those who weren't there, but the fact that enemy fetch lands had never existed, and now they existed, was unbelievable. The hidden treasure things drove people insane. And then Lotus Cobra was spoiled and no one believed it was real. Everybody was like, there's no way, because if fetch lands are coming back, that means I can Lotus Cobra into whatever, into a 5-drop, and that's stupid. And they're like, yeah, you can Lotus Cobra to a 5-drop. And so it turns out, it turns out it is stupid. And they just made a deck full of stupid, ridiculous, overpowered mythics, driven by Lotus Cobra. I did very well at GPDC playing that mythic deck with Lotus Cobras, which were just unbelievable. And yeah, this is a card where we were like, wait a minute, you're just a 2-mana 2/1 with a really good ability. It's really good, but is it that? And it was that good in terms of this is probably one of the best cards of the set, other than the fetch lands. You definitely want to get this and play with this because it's very, very powerful. But it was also the whole this is just it's mythic because it's powerful. It's not Mythic for any other real reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that just kind of was what it was. But I assure you, the first time Lotus Cobra came out, no one believed it. They were just like, whatever, you're not going to get all that mana for nothing. You are. All right. So, Aaron, what's your number 4?
One of the story hooks for Shadows over Innistrad was trying to figure out what was causing all of the madness. I remember even looking at the opening trailer, announcing that we were going back to Shadows over Innistrad. People were deconstructing that. They were looking at the feathers. They were looking at the trees. People were trying to piece together what was going on here. What is causing Addison to go bad? What is making, people really were investigating. Investigate was a mechanic, and for very good reason. People were analyzing art. Was it Merit Lage? Was it Emrakul? Everyone had their theory as to what was really going on. And then shortly after Eldritch Moon came out, we got our answer in a very unmistakable, no doubt about what's going on way with my number 4, which was just a horrific Eldrazi angel. My number 4 is Brisella, Voice of Nightmares.
Yeah.
So Brisella, Voice of Nightmares is the combination of Gisela the Broken Blade and Bruna the Fading Light. So I'm just going to talk about the melding version. So Brisella is a legendary creature, Eldrazi angel, 9/10. That's 9 power, 10 toughness, flying, first strike, vigilance, lifelink. Opponents cannot cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less. I mean, if you didn't know what was going on, you do now. And just when you thought you'd seen everything Eldrazi could do, we'd been through Zendikar, we'd been through Battle for Zendikar. I know with Battle they unleashed, we had like an underwater Eldrazi with Drowner of Hope. And just when we thought we'd really seen it all, oh no, girl, here's an Eldrazi angel. That art is terrifying. You can see their warped heads together. You can see the sinew, the tendons at the forefront. There's just a hint of angel wings indicating there's a little bit left. You have one side that says she now only hears Emrakul's murmurs, the other side that says she only sees Emrakul's visions. This is terrifying. And so, some people were kind of Eldrazi fatigued going into this, but I think even the most, diehard Eldrazi critics could put that aside at the sight of this. Like, here we go.
Yeah, this thing was super cool.
Yeah. It was so cool but it just didn't get there, Emrakul was so busted that we couldn't see. Like, I was like, okay, this is amazing. They've pushed these cards, not so much Bruna, but definitely Gisela. And, they're like, okay, we'll see this in the Pro Tour. I'm going to flip them over, stick them together, giant angel coming to get you, which will be, it doesn't even tap. You just like slam your fist on this freaking thing to come get you. That's awesome.
It's twice as big as a normal Magic card. I was fortunate enough to be able to commentate a tournament for Tales of Adventure, where our main feature match ended, and as soon as we swapped over to the other feature match, we had a flipped Brisella.
Wow.
Man, that is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life in commentating tournament Magic. I'm so happy right now.
Oh my gosh, yeah, this thing is absolutely ridiculous, and I wanted it to work because I wanted more meld cards personally. I think meld as an idea is super neat and interesting.
Right. It's really cool.
It's almost the definition of incredibly parasitic because you gotta have card A and card B, and they have to be together all the time. So
they were all terrifying. I mean, the rat one, where you have the grave robber plus the rat. You have the city that turns into a living city, and you can see like the things. It was terrifying. Like, it was very well done. Flavor.
Back when I was designing, previous to doing the Broken Pact, I was designing an Innistrad game that would have been over Skype, and one of the big bads of the campaign would have been the Walking Keep, and they would have had to fight against a city.
Nice.
Might still bring that back someday, but it's way in the background. But it is such a cool ability, and this card is the mythic version of it.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it as a mythic because it's two cards that aren't, that one is and one isn't, and all this other stuff. It's so super cool and unique. And by the way, Lotus Cobra, by the way, was my number 8. So one of my hires was your number 4. That said, we're going to move on here to number 3. Again, I don't have one. So, Ruben, what's your number 3?
When you think about mythics that are and have been and always sort of have been popular, you've been talking a lot about the price charts of various cards over the history, and I would venture to guess that the price chart for Liliana of the Veil has always sort of trended upward and always sort of been pretty level. It is an iconic Planeswalker character that finally got a playable card. Previous to Liliana of the Veil, there wasn't really a good Liliana. I mean, there was Liliana Vest, 5-mana Liliana, which saw 1 or 2 of play and was a good tournament card as a role player, but nothing really centerpiece like Liliana of the Veil, where people built decks around the card. To this day, a powerful part of modern Jund, During Standard, paired up with Sun Titan, among other powerful effects as well. Was a Pro Tour promo, was an Ultimate box topper, was reprinted a ton of times. Always, always, always want to have more copies of Liliana of the Veil. Iconic art. And at this point is a super iconic mythic in the history of Magic. Originally from the Innistrad expansion, Liliana of the Veil cost a colorless, a black, and a black for 3 mana. I believe the second ever 3 mana Planeswalker after Jace Beleren.
I believe so.
Legendary Planeswalker Liliana. +1, each player discards a card. -2, target player sacrifices a creature. And -6, separate all permanents target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of their choice. And of course, loyalty 3.
Which is great. I mean, she was designed. I got to talk to Eric Lauer, who made this card, who made Liliana from the ground up, and was explaining how they
from the ground up.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's just
got it. They wanted
graveyard pun. Right.
They wanted her to be very good. They wanted her to be very powerful. They were afraid they made her too good, too powerful, and arguments are that they probably did in some ways. But when you read, the first thing it does is everybody discards a card. You're like, okay, that's fine. And
right.
Target player sacrifice a creature. Okay, I pay 3 mana for sacrifice effects or whatever. But when those things kind of start going every turn, those repeatable effects are incredibly powerful. Just to give you an idea here, her all-time high price was $131 March 23rd last year. So
yeah. She's, anytime a 3 mana Planeswalker comes out, they usually have to pass the Liliana test, and even the new Liliana. It's kind of amazing that Liliana the Last Hope, was good. Remember when it first came out, I was like, they ain't Liliana the Veil, ship it. Like nobody wanted it, and now he's playing Legacy and Modern, and it's a pretty stellar card. But yeah, she is the bar that all other Planeswalkers are held to. And if you can't make that, don't even bother trying.
Yeah. And she's just a force to be reckoned with. This is my number 4. We were
Pretty
right there. Liliana, I think, definitely is on any best of Mythic list in some form or fashion. And it's great to see her in the top 3 here. Aaron, what's your number 3?
My number 3 has some of the most unique rules text I've ever seen, which is why it has to be in my top 3. I mentioned that I wanted, huge effects, and there's nothing huger than nothing more huge than being able to affect how people win the game and how people lose the game. I love alternate win conditions like near-death experience, Liliana's contract. I love things like that. But what I love even more is people or cards that say you can't lose the game. And even more specifically, when your opponent can't lose the game. Why would you want to do that? Why? Well, I will tell you. My number 3 is Abyssal Persecutor. So Abyssal Persecutor is 2 colorless and 2 black. It's a creature demon from Worldwake. 6/6 flying trample. You cannot win the game, and your opponents can't lose the game. Killing it is bad, not killing it is worse. And obviously, if you're playing black, you probably have a way to deal with it. And so, we've seen, the 4 converted mana cost flyers, Desecration Demon, things like that. They all have some sort of drawback, whether it be sacrificing a creature or other people can sacrifice creatures to tap it down. This is great. This is such a neat twist on that. It's so black. I love this. The discussions about it are so deep. I love the art. Shout out to Chippy, who we talked about earlier, but just the wording on this, you can't win and they can't lose. Oh, that's so good. And there are so few cards that manipulate the game state like that in such a basic way.
I mean, the idea that, you have this gigantic monster, but first of all, you have to get rid of your gigantic monster so you can also win is neat. It took a little bit to kind of catch on, which is a little weird in some ways. But yeah, eventually people were like, wait a minute, I'm okay beating you to death, and then somehow figuring out how to get rid of it. Right. It's fine, whatever. We'll figure it out. And the
opponent also thinking the same thing. Well, I'll just take it. You're not going to get, banking on them not having a way to deal with it and then hoping you can kill them for it. Just neat ways, neat dynamic.
It's
and feels very mythic. Absolutely.
Yeah. Very, very unique. Very, very interesting. All right, here. So let's move on to number 2. Oh my goodness. Aaron, what's number 2?
I mean, there had to be at least one hashtag on brand card here. And the only thing better than having a busted graveyard is having something from everybody's graveyard. Why settle for just, getting something for yourself? Why settle for just reanimating your things when you can reanimate everybody's things? This is a card that's a $16 card. I've played it in Commander. It'll never see play in competitive because it costs too much mana. But when you resolve it, you really do feel like you're doing something so so dynamic, and it just feels amazing. You feel like the art. I'm looking at the art, and I'm like, that's exactly how I feel when I resolve the spell. My number 2 is Rise of the Dark Realms. So Rise of the Dark Realms is 7 colorless and 2 black. It's a sorcery from Magic 2014. Put all creatures from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. No drawbacks, no clauses, everything. All of you, if you all have creatures, they're mine. Like, wow. And the art, you have Liliana literally being carried on a crowd of zombies. It's like a great zombie mosh pit. And she just looks so regal, like she's holding out her hands like a lady. The zombies are holding her hands. They're not like limping. Oh no, they're holding everything up. Feet, legs, arms, everything. This card is just amazing. And if you're playing Commander, it just feels so good. Every single creature.
I mean, this is a great example. And if you go and you look at the price history, I love it because this thing was $2.50. It was nothing. And then it came and it went, and it kind of got up to 3.5. Yep. And then it kind of came along like 4.5. And then, you know what I mean? It literally, it's just all the way up
exactly the kind of card that's going to do that too.
Yeah.
Cabal Coffers, Nykthos. I mean, there's so many ways to make black mana in Commander, and then what a great payoff.
Yep.
It's a hell of a payoff. Like that's all the things. Thank you, which is great. Ruben, what's your number 2?
So earlier when we were talking about Lotus Cobra, we were talking about signposts of this is what it means to be a mythic. And the definition started like Lich's Mirror does this weird thing, and Godsire is this big monster, and big characters, and planeswalkers and stuff like that. But it took a little while before it was like, oh, mythics can also be good. And Baneslayer Angel was really the first one to cross that line between mythics. Baneslayer Angel has a little bit of that mythic feel to it, but it could also be a rare, and later was. But when it was originally printed in Magic 2010, I'm sorry, I was mistaken. It's always been mythic. But when it was printed in Magic 2010, people thought that it could have been rare, and that they didn't want to have these mythics, which, as you know, only are opened in a pack 1/3 of the time compared to every other individual rare. This card was $50 at one point during its lifespan, which is pretty ridiculous. It has a great box of rules text as well. Baneslayer Angel is 3 colorless, white for a creature angel. It has flying, first strike, lifelink, and protection from demons and from dragons, which I really enjoy.
That's great.
Specific.
But as a 5/5, so a 5-mana 5/5, flying, first strike, lifelink, pro demons and dragons, even though if the last ability basically never mattered. Sometimes it did with Broodmate, but whatever.
Stand in front of an Abyssal Persecutor.
It's true. And you only take one. But the point is that this was the first ever $50 card in Standard. Ever. People were losing their minds. They were like, how in the world is a standard card $50? That's ridiculous. And it's like, well, there's this deck that's worth like, my God, what was it? Like hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not like $1,000 deck.
What was this, Naya Lightsaber?
This was the Mythic deck when it was
actual Mythic,
yeah. And this is where you ran the Sovereigns of Lost Alara and all this other stuff, because Baneslayer Angel is just the best thing you can do. And there was this point where it got, the whole Dies to Doomblade literally showed up thanks to Baneslayer Angel. It was like, Baneslayer's no good, it dies to Doomblade. And it's like, no, when it don't die to Doomblade, you die. That's how that works. And it showed up in Brian Kibler's deck that he won the Pro Tour with. Is that correct? I think in Pro Tour Austin.
I believe so, yes.
He played copies there, which was fantastic. This is one of the most iconic Angel images I've ever seen in Magic anyway, that isn't like original Sarah Angel. Really helped show like what is Magic 2010, what is M10, how are they kind of rebooting this, what is a core set? Let's get back to our fundamentals. Well, an amazing, awe-inspiring Angel is very fundamental.
Absolutely.
Hashtag Gay Pride, I believe. Rebecca Gay.
Right, there you go.
No.
This was... Oh, no?
This was
No?
Greg Staples did this one.
Sorry about that.
This was a big part of the Rubin Zoo deck designed by Ben Rubin that Kibler did win with as well.
Very nice. And this was my number 3. So, like, definitely,
we're right there.
Definitely giving it up to Baneslayer Angel as just one of the coolest, most awesome mythics that's ever been made. That said, I get to my number 2. And we're going to talk about the biggest and the greatest and most so-and-so of such and suches. You might as well go to the top. Sometimes Wizards, I know, and you top those things and flying bottoms and stuff. Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, is the biggest, scariest, freakiest looking thing that exists. Now, yes, there is a worm they just printed in Guilds of Ravnica that is technically larger in converted mana cost, but that's got Convoke. Okay, fine. And there was another Emrakul that didn't cost enough because they were trying to get cute and make sure it had 13 on it and whatever. But the original, the OG, the old school, the just reprinted again in Ultimate Masters and still worth $25 something, they gave us a copy of this for free at the pre-release. They gave everybody a free Emrakul. That is madness. Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, is 15 mana. Okay, it's from Rise of the Eldrazi, back in the McDizzle, if you will. It is a legendary...
I won't. I've decided.
But he was thinking about it. It is a legendary Eldrazi. It cannot be countered. And when you cast it, you take an extra turn after this one. Flying, protection from colored spells, because reasons. And Annihilator 6, for God's sakes, which means whenever you attack with Emrakul, they have to sacrifice 6 permanents. And when Emrakul is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. So that is a trigger, by the way, so you can take advantage of that.
I just realized that Emrakul literally don't need no mans, because you were talking about that worm with Convoke who needs mans.
Right.
You don't need no mans. Yeah. But if you're paying 15 mana for this card, you're doing something wrong with your life. You'll do it if you have to, but Tooth and Nail, Show and Tell, Omniscience, Sneak Attack. I mean, there's so many ways to get this card into play. Oath of Druids, there's so many fun things you can do.
I've seen one hiding underneath of a Windbrisk Heights.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a card I've actually survived a hit before, where you just crack back with your Icarids and have a really good time. But definitely a terrifying card no matter how you see it, and a lot of times just even the sight of it will be like, all right, next game. Like I don't need you to go through the motions, it's fine. I've even done it with Enchantress. You cast enough enchantments and then Sarah's Sanctum, and then whoop, I'll pay 15, thanks. And so feels really good. I mean, just the terror of it. I love a lot of I admit that the original art doesn't really do it for me, but some of the newer art is gorgeous that we've seen. I believe there was an RPTQ promo, which was fantastic. And so, yeah, just the baddest be in the multiverse. There's just Merit Lage and her. It's really all it is. And just an amazing card that you absolutely have to respect in those strategies.
Yeah, this is one of like the one of the great giant characters that they're going to call back to, and they're going to talk about. She was cool with being put in the moon because she was cool with it, not because she didn't want to.
Okay with it. Yeah, that's terrifying.
And I think that says something about a villain, when you don't have, when villains don't have simple plans of like, okay, I just want revenge. I just want to kill this thing. I just want to steal this thing.
Play the long game.
You can't even begin to understand. Like, Bolas is cute, and Lord knows this needs to wrap up soon because I'm exhausted with Bolas. But I could easily just, not necessarily the Eldrazi themselves, but I would love to just figure out what Emrakul's game is. Like, that is a fascinating character.
Yeah, and
there's a alignment here that you can't even comprehend with your human brain. Where it's not good, it's not evil, it's not chaotic, it's not lawful, it's blue and orange. You can't even understand what is going through the infinite mind of Emrakul. This was my number 6.
Nice.
Absolutely emblematic of what it means to be a mythical creature.
Yeah, that's a mythical, serious. They were making the biggest, scariest creatures of all time, and they got there. Yep. All right, let's move over here to number 1. I'm guessing that I share it with Ruben.
Yes.
So that's neat. So, Aaron, what is your number 1?
I kind of teased it a little earlier. I said that my number 1 was great. And if there's anything better than, bringing back creatures from every graveyard, there's nothing better than sort of reshaping the game itself. I'll never forget one of my favorite stories with this card is I was asked to do a Commander stream with Ilian TV. We're all friends. We're all fans here. And he was doing a Commander stream shortly after, I think, Rivals had come out. And we all had to choose characters from Ixalan. So I was Vana, somebody was Tishana, somebody was the dinosaur guy, and somebody was Beckett Brass. And the Tishana player played this card, and we crashed Magic Online. We crashed the stream. This is just a colossal effect. I think even Sam Black had played this card at a tournament at a GP and was doing well with it. And it's just there's just nothing. When you think Mythic, it's got to be the Great Aurora. I mean, number 1's the Great Aurora.
Great choice.
Colorless, 3 green. It's a sorcery from Magic Origins. Each player shuffles all cards from his or her hand and all permanents he or she owns into their library, then draws that many cards. Each player may put any number of land cards from their hand onto the battlefield, exile the Great Aurora. You had a board state, now you don't. I mean, we have, you have board wipes, you have Merciless Eviction. This is a wipe of a different kind. You're literally reshaping the board. And just the hilarity of seeing what people are stuck with, where you see what you had and then you're like, well, here's my 2 lands. Or the people who come out ahead, where you drew 9 cards and 7 were lands. All right, cool. I'm back in the game. It just, the way that it redistributes the game is so awesome that it has to be a mythic. It's actually a story point. I believe the Aurora is a thing in Lorwyn.
Yeah, the Aurora is what happened that changed Lorwyn into Shadowmoor.
Yeah, and so to give that a card in Origins is wild, and it's just such an awe-inspiring effect that just nothing less. It had to be the Great Aurora for me, because everything else just sort of pales in comparison.
It is so tough to make an instant or a sorcery mythic. My entire list has no instants or sorceries of any of the mythics. And when I think of mythic moments in time and mythic spells that exist in Magic and in the history of Magic, I mean, I think of Cruel Ultimatum, but that was a rare because it was printed before Mythic, I think, was introduced with Reborn was Mythic.
No, there were mythics in.
Were they Urge? Oh, yeah, that's right, because Elspeth.
Yeah.
But it was still a rare.
Yeah.
May have been upgraded later, but still a rare. Urza's Ruinous Blast is a moment in time that is like one of the biggest spells that has ever been cast in terms of power and magnitude, still a rare in Dominaria. The Great Aurora is a world-shaping event that feels like a world-shaping event when you play it in a game, and that's perfect.
It is the ultimate reboot, is the way I'd put it, which is terrific. But there is only one card, at least I'm aware of, that has a song written about it. There's only one card that went to $100 in Standard and everyone lost their minds. There's only one card in which I made an entire video saying this card is never going to be banned in Standard for them to later immediately ban it in Standard. Yeah. There's only one card that had to show up and do 4 abilities for the first time. There's only one card that was shown so often, that had such focus on it. At one point, Wizards was like, could you please stop putting pictures of Jace the Mind Sculptor in relation to Magic the Gathering articles and content and stuff? And we don't want to make a Jace the Mind Sculptor playmat. We don't want to make Jace the Mind Sculptor sleeves, because Jace the Mind Sculptor was just everything back in the day of 2010.
Is better than all.
And is better than all was completely ridiculous. Jace the Mind Sculptor is 2 blue, 2 generic mana for a mythic legendary planeswalker. Jace showed up in World Wake, is still worth almost $100, even if it's not as good as people thought it was going to be in Modern, but regardless. So for 4 mana, you get a 3 loyalty planeswalker with 4 abilities for the first time ever, plus 2. Look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card on the bottom of that player's library. 0: draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order, aka Brainstorm. -1, return target creature to its owner's hand, aka Unsummon. And -12, exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library. A few things. Well, at 2010, or sort of around there, was what I would describe as Max Magic Show, where I had an incredible amount of access to R&D. I was traveling the world, making content for Magic. This was like the time period. And so I've got lots of content. You can go back and have an entire interview with Mike Turian, asking him basically over and over, what in the hell were you thinking? I have an entire show from Pro Tour San Diego, look it up, where you can see all these pros who say that Jace is not good, Jace is not good enough, Jace is never going to get there, blah, blah, blah. And it got banned because it was ridiculous. Jace is insane. And the last ability on Jace used to be -9. At the last minute, they changed it to -12. That's scary. And the ability to look at your opponent, there's no feeling than when you look at your opponent's top card and you go, keep it.
Yeah, go ahead and keep that one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Jace.
It's kind of neat to see. I remember when it got unbanned, and there were people that were like, you can't do it. You can't do it. You don't know what you've done. People predicting the fallout. I remember logging on to Twitch and the Magic page and just seeing how many people were playing it. People who wouldn't normally play blue, Scapeshift players were trying it, Control players were trying it. People were so excited to play with this card. And it's fine, honestly, I have a great appreciation for it being a legacy of the vintage player, but, it's fine. Modern didn't explode on itself because Jace was back, ended up being okay. We talked about the Liliana test. Every 3 mana planeswalker has to pass, but there's also the 4 mana one where you have the Jace or the 4 abilities. And I remember when Chandra Torture Defiance people came out, people were like, ugh, it's fine, whatever, and she ended up being quite good. I think that she holds a candle. I think for what she does, she holds a candle nicely to Jace. She's not Jace, but she held her own as an ability, as someone with 4 abilities. And so another one of those bars that any planeswalker who's even close to it has to pass or exceed. And definitely a card that you have to respect.
there was a point where Aaron Forsyth said something to the effect of, it's nice to watch Legacy where you get to see standard all-stars like Stormforged Mystic and Jace, or you said it the other way around where you're watching standard to look at Legacy cards.
Yeah.
The point is you would have open series events where standard would happen on Saturday and Legacy would happen on Sunday, and the same decks were in both. Yeah. It was insane. It was ridiculous. And that's how bad it got.
There was a weekend, I think, where there was a weekend where, like, I think it was maybe Dave Shields or Matt Costa or someone along those lines just entered the Legacy event with their Stoneblade deck, standard Stoneblade deck, and with Squadron Hawks and everything, and was 3-0 and then dropped to go play in the day 2 of the tournament or something ridiculous like that. Jace is just an absurd card. It defines what it means to be a Mythic, defines what it means to be the most powerful Planeswalker, and Jace the Mind Sculptor is better than all.
That's right. And it...
I have to say, one of the downsides of playing sort of the broken decks that I play is that I don't necessarily see cards the way that other people do. I remember when I was first learning Vintage, I would therapy somebody, and I had my girlfriends on stream with me, and I was like, "You guys, that's a Jace the Mind Sculptor," and they're like, "Yeah, you don't care. Therapy something else." But I was like, "But it's Jace the Mind Sculptor." It's like, right. Who cares? And it wasn't until I started playing other decks, it was like, oh, I should probably care about this card now.
Yeah, this was finally unbanned in Modern last year, and everyone was losing their minds. And there were an article by Mr. Ben Friedman. I love Ben, but I'm never going to let him live it down at this point, who was just like, you're ruining the format. The format will be Jace versus anti-Jace. And it's like, no, it really ain't.
It turns out it was 6 months of everyone's trying to figure out how to be good with Jace or beat Jace, and then Tron will just win for 6 months because everyone's distracted.
Sure.
And let's not forget, it's also the bane of my existence as a Reanimator player. There's nothing worse than being so proud of yourself that you get your turn 1 Grizzlebrand and it's like Jace, and it's like,
and back it goes. That was our top 10 Mythics. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, and Ruben's top 10. And we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me, and be sure to tune into the pre-release this Friday at twitch.tv/loadingreadyrun.
That's going to be awesome. And thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. I hope that this week I only had sweet potatoes.
Oh my goodness. Well, we go to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.